Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and today I'm showing you a car that I've wanted to show you for years. It's the Triumph Stag. Now the Triumph Stag is an interesting beast because number one, it was never written in the plans for Triumph to even have the Triumph Stag, and number two, it's the Triumph that I never hear anybody say a bad word about. In fact, Triumph Stag fans are probably some of the most enthusiastic fans of their cars. So what's all the hype about? Well, in today's video, I'm going to show you around the outside, tell you the very interesting story of the Triumph Stag and how Michelotti becomes involved, show you under the bonnet, inside the boot, inside the cabin itself, which is a lovely bit area. It's so nicely designed. And then we're going to take it out for a test drive. And if you love it, you could be test driving it too, but more about that later on. So come on, let's have a look round. The Triumph Stag, to be bold with a statement straight off the bat, is a car which should never have existed. But what do I mean by that? Well, Triumph had sort of made peace with the convertible tourer market, or so it seemed, because their last convertible tourer, pre the Triumph Stag, was the late 1940s Roadster 2000. However, design genius Michelotti had other ideas. Now, if you're a Triumph fan, you'll recognise that name because Michelotti worked on all sorts of cars. He worked on things like the Herald, the Triumph 1300, the 1500. His list goes on. Now, Triumph knew that he was a stylish, safe pair of hands. So when he asked for a Triumph 2000 to turn into a special for the 1965 Turin Motor Show, he was green-lighted and given a works service support vehicle, which had been used at the 1965 Le Mans 24-hour race. And with that, a deal was struck. And Michelotti said if he produced a car which was to the liking of the engineering team, and in particular Harry Webster, who was director of engineering, Triumph could then take whatever he created with that 2000 and bring it back and launch it as a new model. So essentially he said, look, I'm just going to make you a concept, see what you think. And here's the thing, it goes back to Triumph, and Triumph love it. They think it's great. And there's a few bits of jiggery pokery, which is a really long story. And what happens then is the car goes into production in 1970. And there were loads of things that led up to that, which probably caused some of the problems. So it moves from using the proposed 2-litre engine used in the 2000s, and they then come back with a Meteor 2.5 PI V8 3-litre engine. Now, you might ask why, considering Triumph and Rover were now under the same British Leyland umbrella, that the company didn't just use the Buick V8, which was something that Rover were already using, they already had access to it, and they understood it. But here's the thing, despite being under the same umbrella, the brands under BL rarely collaborated without friction, and because they competed in the same markets and cannibalised from each other, they didn't want to work together, because if you helped your competitor get sales, it put you at risk. Now, there were also arguments because they go, well, the engine doesn't fit, it's too tall, there's too many last minute changes that need to be made for it to be a logical choice, there's additional spend. But look, again, it's a great example. We talk about how British Leyland didn't use a wealth of intelligence under one roof in a thoughtful way. This is a really good example. And yes, I know before they come together, Triumph had invested lots of money in their V8 development. But look, at what point do you just have a little bit of give in the plans and say, why don't we all sing from the same hymn sheet? Now, skip all of that. We then get to launch, and the car at launch is a big hit in the UK, and there was an extensive waiting list going back months. I've read two different numbers here. I've read 10 months and I've read a year, but essentially big waiting list, big hype, excitement. Now, the American buying audience were keen too, and this was a really big market for Triumph, and it's quite keen to mention this. But here's the thing, the reliability held the car back from being the big hitter it needed to be stateside, which is such a shame because the American market was so very much considered within the production on this, right down to things like the fuel injection changing to dual Zenith Strongberg carbs to meet the American emissions requirements. But look, it just didn't sell very many in America. And in fact, I've got a few different numbers on this, but essentially it was less than 5,000 cars made it to America, which, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, makes it a bit of a flop on the American market. And I hate saying that because I really like the Stag and think it deserved so much more. Now later on we talk about the 1970s build quality variants being a bit of a problem. But that wasn't the only problem for the Triumph Stag, because you also had the overheating issue as well. Now I like to call them quirks, and there were quirks to the engine which meant the way that users had perhaps learnt to live with other commonly known British engines used within the BL range were completely different to those that they needed for these new engines. So what do I think is the problem? Well, there were things, I'm going to give some examples, things like the block being iron and the head being aluminium. It then meant that corrosion inhibiting antifreeze had to be used all year round, and then the way that the engine was designed and formatted, the coolant needed checking after the engine had been running hot. Now, whilst these are essentially weaknesses, a bit of forecourt education from British Leyland salesmen might have lessened some of these first hurdle falls and lessened the fallout of this, and turned those weaknesses into usership quirks. And essentially, there was just a big falling down of all of that. So realistically, was it the fault of the car? Was it the fault of the salesman? A bit of both. I think some of these problems could have been easily avoided. But all in all, it would be lazy to sit here and say, well, it made it rubbish, because a majestic car was created overall. The 3-litre engine gave 146 brake horsepower, a breathtaking, well for the time, top speed of 120 miles an hour could allegedly be achieved. And finally, it was a 70s non-luxury car fitted with a decent braking system. It had discs to front, drums to rear, and most importantly, a divided braking system with a tandem master cylinder. I cannot explain how good that is in an era where there were cars still being readily churned out with single master cylinder, single circuit brakes that could go wrong quite frequently and create disaster. The steering is as you'd expect, it's rack and pinion, and it's 2.5 turns lock to lock. You're going to see later on how spot on this steering is. And finally, for those that have never seen a Stag in the wild or at a car show, it's roughly 14 foot 5 inches long and 5 foot 3 inches wide, which in new money for those of you out there that work in metres is 4.4 metres by 1.61, roughly. Now, it'd be lazy for me to just sit here, run it down and say, well, that's that, let's have a look at the test. But look, in today's world, the Triumph Stag is probably one of the most loved Triumphs, and the retention rates are really good. So they made roughly 25,800 and just under 9,000 remain in existence, which, let's be honest, isn't bad going, and it shows that they can be easily kept on the road and they don't just have a future in the future, but they've been kept going. They are a car which has retained value. Now, before we get into the ins and outs of the dash and we do a test, I'd like to just say a massive thank you to my dear friend and journalist Sam Skelton for all the help in doing a bit of work on the research today and finding out more about the Triumph Stag. Potentially I'm biased as a Triumph owner, but my goodness, isn't this a gorgeous car? And this is the thing with sports cars, is I've never found a sports car until today that I actually like. And I probably like this one because I adore Michelotti styling. Mwah, absolute best of the 20th century in my opinion. Just what a creative, talented man. And second of all, it has everything that you need. Quite often you get into a sports car and people go, yeah, you've got the power and that's everything you need, and then suddenly things like the seating and what's on the dash and everything else becomes almost tertiary. It's all just about the power, or putting the roof down. Wow, the roof's down. This, it is everything. First of all, let's talk about how much space we have around us. The last kind of British Leyland sports car that I drove was a midget. Now I know it's so much smaller than this and it's a different market, but it's still a sports car, right? And I got into it and it just put me off. I just thought, I'm just not a sports car girl. But coming into this, I think maybe my mind could be changed, because this has everything that I need in terms of space. The seats, by the way, are so comfortable. You've got these nasty little headrests, which probably aren't going to do much for me in the long run, but the contouring of these seats is just so that it hugs your back, and when you're driving and the positioning of the seating, it just makes it I don't know, a lot more comfortable than I was expecting. I looked at this and I thought I could take that on a mega trip around Europe. It looks so comfy inside, and I've got so much room around me, and those back seats are usable. And I know it's designed as a 2+2, but look, it is ticking the boxes. And so if you get seating and you get power and all the styling on the outside, surely you're not going to get much on the dash, right? Well, that would usually be the case with a sports car, especially one that's not, you know, hugely expensive like an E-Type or something. But coming inside, well, you've got everything that you would be getting on your Triumph Saloon. Something that I really like on this, by the way, is the glove box design. And it's this little leather tag. It might be vinyl, to be honest, but it looks like leather. It's a little leather tag that you open the glove box with. Little design details like that take a car from being nice to really special. Coming down from there, you've got an ample parcel shelf. What I really like in this is that they've got that fire extinguisher, so if something goes wrong, you can sort it out. Coming into the middle, everything you need really. You've got your air vents. Coming down into your stereo, I thought, oh, where's the front of that stereo gone? And then I found it in the glove box when I was doing a dig, so it is safe inside the car, in case anyone from Great British Car Journey is watching. Coming down from here, you've got your fan. Seems to be on a twin speed. Now, I would turn that on, but it is so loud. Coming down from there, you've got your choke, and then on the right-hand side, you've got cigar lighter and window demist. All very good. Comes down into the heater control panel with an inbuilt ashtray. Do you know what I really like? And this is just personal preference. It's not, you know, be all and end all. Is I love the triple combo of black plastic, chrome or chrome finish, and wood. It's so 70s, and in my opinion, it's really timeless. It's something that people are coming back towards again. I really like it. And by the way, the materials can't be too bad in this because it's held up remarkably well, to say it's used quite a lot. Coming in front of us, again, the car continues to shine because we have all the gauges that you could possibly need. So on the left hand side, you have what's known as the Triumph All Systems Go wheel. Some people call it the Pi or whatever, but if you ever look at brochures from the time, this is high level geekery, they do call it the All Systems Go wheel. And on there, you've got your oil, you've got your ignition, you've got fuel warning light, which is buzzing today, but we do have enough fuel in the car because you might see it flash when we're driving. You've got your handbrake, you've got your choke, you've got your indicator warning lights, and you know what, all of them work. I'm really jealous, mine don't. You've got your amp meter, you've got temperature gauge, you've got speedo. There's a fastened seatbelt sign in the middle, which is really we've talked a bit about America already, but we might as well talk about it again. Quite often for the time, Americans had a lot more safety requirements or consciousness towards safety, and I guess that was probably maybe put in for the American market because they probably would have liked that little touch. I don't think it's working though, because I plonked myself in earlier, started the car, and the belt light didn't come on. Coming down from there, you've got your hazard warning lights, you've got your rev counter, oil pressure gauge, and your fuel gauge, and a brake warning light. So as you can see here, we've actually got quite a lot, especially even for a 70s car. Actually, quite a lot of cars of the 70s don't have this much going on. Oh, I'm really into this car. And then over on the right hand side, this is a little bit like that Triumph 2000, but look, we know where this comes from, so we're not really surprised. This is the light switch, and then you've got your indicators on this side, and you've got your twin speed wipers on the left hand side. They're the same stalks that I've got in my Triumph 1300, and I think they're also on, are they on the Triumph 1300? They're on something. I think they might be on the Marina. It's from the British Leyland parts bin anyway. They're on quite a lot, so it's not exclusive to this car. Coming down into this area here, now when you went and bought these, they had pretty much a standard, I think, the 4-speed manual box on, but one of the options that they did at the time was a 3-speed auto. So that's what we have in this. We have the 3-speed automatic. And then over to the left-hand side of that is our panel light switch, which, as you can see, is actually quite effective. Actually, I've just said it's a panel light switch. You know what? I think the light has been reflecting off down there, and it's actually the interior light up here. But because it's so bright, it's been reflecting down there, and I thought it was the panel lights. So do excuse me. Anyway, that's pretty much everything. But what about the engine? Well, we've got that V8 3 litre. It's 148 horsepower, and I think it does 0 to 60 in 10.1 seconds. It's like nothing at all, and the top speed is 117 miles per hour. Right, have a little listen. By the way, I've just given you that top speed there. I got that off an online test that I was reading. That might be, for the manual, it might be slightly slower on the auto, but anyway, I guess we could say that's the best you can hope to get. And also it's 10.5, not 10.1, sorry. This has got a little bit of an immobiliser on, but anyway. Right, we'll check we're in park. You are gonna die and go to heaven when you hear this engine. It is one of the spiciest and the best that we've had out this year. Oh, I could package it up and take it home for myself. God, that sounds good. Have a listen from the back as well, and then we'll pop out and drive her. Right, let's go on an adventure. A little bit of wiper action for Ian. Good God, that is... Wonder how mad Great British Car Journey will be if I pinch this and go out for a motorway drive. Should we do it again, see how far, wow, let's see how it feels. Jesus, that is something else. Oh God, I haven't felt that alive in ages. Not since I drank 3 cans of Red Bull when I was really tired. Oh, this is just something. If you've never driven one of these, this is a car you need to drive. As you can probably see at home, the steering is incredibly light and responsive. It's beautiful. The gear change, being an auto, is just put to the back of my mind because it's doing all the jobs for me. So all I need to do is just concentrate on the driving experience. And well, it's absolutely glorious. I just wish that I had a bigger stretch of road to really open her up and see what she's capable of. Now, the one thing that gets me is I thought with this being a convertible that it was going to sound a lot louder inside, but actually the sound deadening has been well placed, because as you can probably hear at home, apart from a few rattles that you can hear because there's a couple of little gaps around here where the roof doesn't quite join, it's very quiet inside. To say we've got a V8 burbling under the bonnet, it's just lovely. And you drive along, you've got these seats, and it's taking most of the lumps and bumps in its stride. Oh, good. It is, I don't have a bad word to say about this, and I'm really looking for the bad word to say. I guess it's a bit thirsty is what I'm going to have to stretch to, because it does 22 miles per gallon, I think. But look, that's not what you're thinking about when you're driving something like this, because this is just everything. It's majestic, it's comfortable, it's easy to drive. The way that you're seated and the seating position gives you such confidence, because I didn't expect this, so I'm going to tell you, because you might not expect it yourself if you've never been in one, is I can see right to the end of the bonnet. Truth be told, and someone's going to tell me off for being sexist, I actually thought it was a bit of a man's car, because it's big and it's dominant and it looks like it really owns the road, and I thought that is not a car for me. But now that I've got in this And I really liked that Triumph 2000, didn't I? Do you remember early this year? But this is it. I mean, I can totally see the hype now, and I get it. I get it, I want it, and I want to be part of it. And I bet you'd want to be part of it too if you drove this. Because so many people criticise British Leyland in the 70s. And we do have to have some critique in this in terms of British Leyland. Because you look at this car now, this is a cracking car. The design, the layout inside, the comfort, the sound, the atmosphere, the way it makes you feel. And you know what British Leyland did at the time? They ballsed it up. They got the cars and they built them to varying build quality, and it took something which should have been an absolute triumph, if you'll pardon the pun, for British Leyland. It should have knocked the socks off people, but instead all people could fixate on was the fact that no one had actually built them that well. The thing is today we're really lucky, because if you take a car now, well, if you take a Triumph Stag now in 2023 or 2024 when you're probably watching this video, you're going to be taking one that everyone's probably sorted all the problems out on. You're not going to come up against the same barriers that somebody would have come up against in the 1970s. So whilst time has passed and that will have tarnished some of the chrome, the blessing in this is that you're not going to be the person trying to fault find and take it back for all the warranty claims. Now, they didn't sell too many of these in terms of probably what was expected, but it doesn't make it any less of a success, because you look at this today and I think that it's aged well in terms of its styling. It handles much better than some cars that were far more expensive at the time. And it still turns heads. It does everything that you'd want from a high-end classic, but at a much cheaper price. I love this. This has been such a good car. It should have been much bigger success. It should have been bigger in America. It should have been more highly thought of here. And a lot of that I put down to the build quality, because it certainly isn't the car or the concept itself. It really shines in a range that at the time, even as a British Leyland fan, I will be honest, was slightly lackluster. This is just, everything. I've really enjoyed this car. Listen to this. Listen to this, watch the fuel light come on. It's the Triumph Stag experience. Now, if you want the Triumph Stag experience yourself, you are in luck, because Great British Car Journey have this on their Drive Dad's car fleet, which means that you can take this out yourself. They're based in Derbyshire. I've put all the details in the description box below. You've got to have a UK driving licence to do it, but it's well worth the travel up. They've got loads of other cars on the fleet as well. They've got this, they've got Sunbeam Rapier, which you might see on the channel soon, and they've got various other bits and pieces as well. You've also got your bread and butter stuff like Minis, you've got a Reliant Robin, you've got a Morris Minor, you've got a Land Rover, but all in all there's quite a diverse range to choose from. So if you fancy doing something different next year, come and get yourself down and make sure you test this, because this for me is the best out of the lot on Drive Dad's car. Love it. Now, I really hope you've enjoyed this little mini experience today. I certainly have. I can't financially afford to get myself involved with any Triumph Stags, otherwise I definitely think I would. But if you're wondering if I've ever won the lottery and you see me driving a Stag, please rest assured that is because I have, because if I did have lots of disposable income, I would get one of these. But hey, look, that's it from me today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll be back again next week having a look at something totally different. But until then, take care and drive safely.